Rowter Rocks is a site I've visited on numerous occasions. It's steeped in history and boasts some unique, distinctive rock formations and mysterious rock art. These unique features are sure to intrigue and fascinate any visitor to Birchover in Derbyshire. Rowter Rocks over the years have undergone many spelling variants, from Rowter, 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 Rowter. This has made research challenging at times, but also very rewarding, as new lines of research can be opened. Rowter Rocks lays in the little hamlet village of Lower Town in Derbyshire. The village squire was the Reverend Thomas Eyre, who resided in Rowter Hall. He had his own private chapel, either Jesus Chapel, Rowter Chapel, or Ye Old Chapel. This chapel was built in Norman times and was later renamed St. Michael's Church when the neighbouring village of Birchover swallowed up Lower Town. Thomas Eyre, a wealthy, educated squire, industrialist and antiquarian, played a significant role in the evolution of Rowter Rocks. His frequent visits to the site to draw inspiration from a landscape and write his sermons left a lasting imprint on a site's history, underscoring his influence. Research reveals that in the 17th and 18th century rural Britain there was a significant decline in agricultural peasantry. With his estate having limited work, Thomas Eyre employed these men as stonemasons. These skilled and unskilled stonemasons were put to good work on Rowter Rocks, a testament to the challenging landscape of the time. Thomas Eyre, being the eccentric he was, planned an elaborate stone garden on Rowter Rocks. He wanted steps where he could move freely between the large stone areas where he could sit, ponder, enjoy the landscape with his gentlemanly friends. He also needed places to sit that were protected from the elements. The stonemasons made tunnels cut into the rock, with 2 rooms carved into the rock face, viewing platforms, baptism fonts, and 3 armchairs carved out of rock, with steps leading from level to level. These formed a study and playground for the eccentric Reverend, where he is reputed to have entertained his friends and given sermons on a mount to his congregation. It is said that this mysterious pile of gritstone, known as Rowter rocks, reputedly had connections with the early Druids of Derbyshire. Several rude rock art symbols are carved into the rocks at Rowter, the best preserved of the three large cups, with a distinctive steep-sided section surrounded by single double rings and less symmetrical elements. Although badly worn, it could date to the 3rd or 2nd millennium BC, adding more intrigue and mystery to this playground. The Druid connection is strange. I have looked through records to find out if the Druids Inn at Lower Town had a name change in the past. Since Rowter Church was commonly known as the Ye Old Chapel, one might assume the inn was called Ye Old Inn or something to that equivalent. History tells us that an inn with the name Druid in the title often indicated where a local branch of the ancient order of Druids would hold its meetings. The cave system at Rowter Rocks provides an alternative to how the Druid connection evolved there. In the 4th century, Haddon Hall had its own hermit living at Cratcliffe Cave on its estate. The hermit was there to guide visitors to the hall and keep the area. Perhaps Thomas Eyre liked the romanticisms of a hermit living in Rowter caves. There is no evidence for or against this thinking. As a wealthy eccentric, anything was possible. By 1717, Thomas Eyre had died, and the church was passed on to the Reverend John Gresley, and then to John Bradley, Gent of Rowter. I don't know if these two reverends took over the maintenance of Rowter Rocks stone garden. They likely did, as much interest re-emerged by Rowter Rocks in the late 18th century. John Nichols' 1782 book, Archaeology or Miscellaneous Tracts Relating to Antiquarian, contains detailed historical accounts and descriptions of Rowter Rocks. Hayman Rook wrote an account about the Druidical remains at Rowter Rocks on April the 6th, 1780.
At the furthest end of Stanton Moor, close to the village of Birchover, is a singular mass of large rocks called Rowter, or Rowter. These rocks stand atop a hill, commanding an extensive view over the moor. They were much frequented by the Druids, a connection that intrigues and fascinates historians and enthusiasts alike. Plate 12 shows a view of Rowter Rocks, where a pillar on the top was set up a few years ago to support a weathercock. The number of Druidical remains suggests that this place was inhabited by the Druids. Here are temples, caves, rock barons, rocking stones, rock idols, and cairns. There are more durable monuments that have withstood the ravages of time and remain, helping to illuminate their history. Down the lane, as the crow flies, are many more stone circles, one such is 9 ladies, and the other is Doltor. On moonlit nights, I've been told you can see the Druids having a ritual ceremony there, chanting something or other. I've yet to witness this, but the local farmers ask the Druids to come to their lands to help fertilize the crops sown. The Druids from the ancient Druid order frequent the inn in the garb.
During the Druid revival of the 18th century, The ancient order of Druids, a fraternal society modelled on the Freemasons, became a significant part of the Druids' legacy. This revival was part of a broader interest in ancient pre-Roman Druids, sparked in the early 1800s by the writings of antiquarians such as John Toland and William Stukeley. During the 19th and 20th century, a paid guide took members of the public on guided tours of this mystical and fascinating garden of heaven and earth. History tells us that in this period, wealthy estate owners would pay a garden hermit to sit in caves and walk around their estate, looking spiritual without speaking. This may be where the later Druid connection came in. Depending on a tour group, the guides spun a web of intrigue into their stories. I want to share with you a passage from the 1820 edition of a quarto literary paper called The Kaleidoscope, published by John Smith. In his paper, Pedestrian Tour Through the Peak, Geoffrey Crayon graphically describes these so-called Druid rocks.
Having reached Birchover, we walked through the village to the celebrated Rowter rocks, of vast shape and size, piled one above another in the most confused manner. At the foot of the rocks is a little public house bearing the significant name of the Druid, where the guide who usually accompanies visitors over the pile resides. We tapped at the door, waiting for someone to answer. When we looked through the window, we could not see anyone in the house, so we had no alternative but to trust our guidance. Here, we found a succession of gritstone blocks, of the most wild and grotesque forms, that extend from east to west along the middle of the hill. In some of the rocks, chambers or caves have been excavated, apparently within a recent period. The largest of them, about 16 feet in length, has received the appellation of the echo, from the singular reverberation of sound heard within. Some writers have affirmed that the place was a resort of the Druids and that these immense blocks were raised to their present position by their exertions. The several rocking stones had been objects of idolatrous worship. The general appearance leads to the supposition that it is the work of nature and has been occasioned by the subsiding of the surrounding strata, whilst, as regards the rocking stones, which have been so classed among Druidical remains, it is now pretty generally admitted by geologists and antiquaries that many of the so-called Logan or rocking stones are not works of art, but the result of natural causes. In other words, that the constant action of the weather through countless ages has worn away the softer parts of the sandstone, leaving the more solid portions in their present form. The name Rowter, or Rowter, the correct designation, is derived from the words roy to move, or rock backwards and forwards, and tor, which signifies a hill or rock, an expression of frequent occurrence in this part of the kingdom.
After 1782, nothing new was written about the Druids of Rowter Rocks. Some say Rowter Rocks was just a playground for Thomas Eyre, and our connections with the Druids was the Druids Inn, a meeting place for the members of the ancient order of Druids, which was founded in 1780. I know that since churches are built on the highest elevation and used as landmarks. Thomas Eyre's privately endowed chapel didn't have a commanding view. Since Thomas Eyre had access to Rowter rocks, he must have devised a cunning plan to elevate the chapel higher without moving it by putting crosses on the rocks. This is why so many empty square sockets are on top of the flat stones. Since Rowter rocks were vandalized by the mischievous efforts of several young men on Whit Sunday, 1799, I can safely assume the crosses were also vandalized or were a later feature. On my last visit, I found what looked like broken pieces of stone crosses on the lower edges. This is actual fact, but I would not rule out the crosses being made of wood either. Rowter rocks might even have been where Thomas Eyre and other ministers delivered their sermons on the Mount. This would have been an ideal place to preach, as Jesus had preached all those years ago, and it would also have been a great place to ring a bell to call in parishioners. Since place names have significantly altered over time, I found an alternative spelling quite by chance whilst reading Henry Moore's 1818 guidebook of Derbyshire, picturesque excursions from Derby to Matlock, Bath, and its vicinity.
On reaching the hamlet of Birchover, Rowter rocks are close by Birchover. They consist of immense gritstone blocks heaped together in the wildest confusion imaginable. I ascended to the western extremity, where several insular blocks appeared like turrets. Proceeding a little higher on the left is seen a rude imitation of an elbow chair, cut in the rock, with a seat on each side of it. A few small steps are also cut in the rock that leads up to them. Near is a broken square shaft which is inserted into the rock, and it probably may be the remains of a cross. I've seen a rock basin and another square hole near it. Planting the cross on these remains of pagan times must be regarded as the triumph of truth over error. A few yards further, another broken cross shaft appears, and further still, another square hole, making all 5 in number. On the highest point is a small column, surmounted by a vane and the cardinal points. A negative taste placed it there. It has a harmful effect and wishes it away. The views of this eminence are outstanding and possess a peculiar character. The rocks are gritstone, thrown into completely wild and picturesque confusion. The appearance of this singular eminence is entirely spoiled by being nearly covered with formal fir trees that hide the most interesting parts. The pinnacle on the summit also joins in the spoliation of the picturesque effect, so that at a short distance, it appears like a simple mount with a summer house upon it. The ancients, no doubt, selected such opportunities as nature presented for saving labor in their works. Amused with various rocks, pleasing views, and speculative ideas that naturally arise on viewing ancient relics, associated with a still more remote and extraordinary work of nature.
In my heart, I still envision Thomas Eyre delivering his sermon from Rowter rocks and hiring someone to play the Hermit. Henry Moore was not fair in questioning why the wind vane was there, because it's a beautiful Christian symbol of Saint Peter. With all that's written on Rowter rocks, no one can say for sure to tell the actual history. Perhaps Thomas Eyre was an Anglican priest, Freemason, and the Druids were a ruse told by storytellers. All that's written is pseudo-history. What I do know is that Rowter rocks is visited by hundreds of people every month, including Druids, witches and the like, casting circles and sending prayers out in the wind. Me, I enjoy the splendour and the mysticism of this beautiful garden full of secrets and intrigue.